I'm Tim Fitzpatrick. I'll explain to you a bit about who I am and how I came to be here. I've had a very different experience to most of you. This started for me when I was working as a tutor at the School of Drama at the University of New South Wales a long, long time ago. And my job was to work with groups of first-year students in a space not at all, very much different from what we've got here, working on scenes from the great plays of the Western canon. And the room we were in was a square room, and I then spent 5 years, 12 hours a week, 10 semesters, working with students in a room that lent itself to a thrust stage configuration with 3 sides. I didn't realise it at the time, but I learned an enormous amount about how you manipulate bodies in space if the audience is on 3 sides rather than 1. I also met at that stage Philip Parsons, who is an extraordinary Shakespeare scholar, and he piqued my interest in Shakespeare. My field was actually Italian theatre. And on the basis of that, I then did a workshop for teachers on the campus here at Sydney University, a weekend workshop organised by Continuing Education. And we were working on the Porter scene from Macbeth, and as always happens, you're working on one thing and focusing on one thing. We were looking at the comedy of the Porter scene, and something else happened. It was a 2-day workshop, and between the first day and the second day, I went back to the text because I realised there was something funny going on in the text, that the text had a strange shape, that Shakespeare was trying to do something very particular. I didn't know what it was, except the next morning I realised what it was. And what it was that the sequence around the killing of Duncan involves three offstage locations. There's the door behind which Duncan's been killed. There's the door where Lady Macbeth and all the others come and go to the other chambers. Yeah? And there's the south entry, where Macduff comes in and goes to the door, finds Duncan. And what I discovered was that there was clear evidence in the text that Shakespeare was organising it so that those 3 offstage locations could be behind just 2 doors. One door's locked down, it's Duncan's door, the other one flips. And he's written bits in the text to enable that flip to happening without the audience thinking, that's funny, how come Macduff didn't meet Macbeth as he walked off and he walked on? So I then co-wrote an article about that, and that came to the attention of Andrew Gurr, the great theatre historian, and he said, you really should take this further. And I did, and he's regretted it ever since because we've been fighting like cat and dog over the number of entrances. I've very explicitly excluded the central entrance. A lot of scholars believe that there was a 3rd space here, a discovery space, curtained. The curtains could be drawn back, and that's where you would have your discoveries that are set from backstage. Now, I'm in a minority here, but just recently Leslie Thompson, a very prestigious scholar, has come out and pointed out to the theatre historians that have been pushing this discovery space for a long time that there was actually no term at the time for this entity. There were terms for the doors, the trapdoor, the gallery, the posts. They didn't have a word to describe this thing that we think was there, which is very interesting. So I'm prepared to nail my whatever to the mast. Okay, so then I moved to performance studies here, and on the basis of that work, I then went to the London Globe in 1995, before it had been finished, went out on the stage when there was no one else in the theatre, tried to do every soliloquy I knew, and realised that that space was way too big, that it couldn't possibly be right. So that led to another lot of research that I did on the evidence for how big the original globes were. And those of you who have been to the pop-up globe, that is a realisation of my research. The dimensions there, it's much smaller than the globe. It fits the archaeology, whereas the London globe doesn't. London globe's 100 feet across, the pop-up globe is 86 feet across. And that's only, you say, 7 feet difference in radius. But 7 feet difference in radius, if you remember your maths, pi r squared, It's a big difference. If you square the radius and multiply by pi, the yard in London's 1.5 times as big as the yard of pop-up light, which is very different. The actors are working against the theatre. They're working their butts off to try and reach the goals, whereas the pop-up globe, the actors love it. So that's where I've been. Now, what this is going to be is about workshopping, actually, as a technique, because I believe that workshopping is an extraordinarily powerful technique to get to an understanding of how the texts were designed to be worked. I mean, Shakespeare wrote the plays for a big space. We've got a thrust stage that isn't quite as big as it should be, but it's a question not just of size, it's a question of size and proximity. The fact that you're all close to this big space has got a number of implications. Firstly, you can't actually see the whole stage in one glance. You've got to keep looking around to look at the character down there and the character up here and that other one over there and what's going on. So your attention patterns become much more active. And that is what makes you think it's so interesting. It's not necessarily what's going on the stage, it's what you're having to do. Wow, things are happening here. It's that, the sort of reflective dimension of the audience experience. So a thrust stage. The other thing about a thrust stage, I've got 2 volunteers for a couple of lines, just a little demo. One, you can be Lady Macbeth.
Right.
I need a Macbeth, with any gender, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So would you just like to just stand up there and just do this little bit? Purposely not given, here's a tip, if you ever get students of any sort in a workshop situation, don't let them have the text. Otherwise they'll just sit there and read it and listen. Okay? The aim of the workshop is to make sure they watch what's going on. Okay, so if you just run the lines for us anyway.
Okay. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go, carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood.
I'll go no more. I'm afraid to think of what I have done. Look on it again, I dare not.
Infirm of purpose, give me the daggers.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, you notice that reflexively they did what we normally do. We face the audience. Or
Yeah, we
most
should
of
have
it.
faced each other.
Ah.
Yeah.
This is something you can do on a thrust stage that you can't do on a proscenium arch stage. You can do full frontal stuff. Okay, come down here. All right, a couple of metres apart. Do it straight to each other.
Right. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go, carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood.
I'll go no more. I'm afraid to think what I have done. Look on it again, I dare not.
Infirm of purpose, give me the daggers.
Okay. Yep. You couldn't see him, could you?
No.
No. Did it matter?
No,
All right, why?
because I was engrossed in the language and their movement. you know.
Okay, that's it.
They were interacting with each other. I
Okay.
didn't need to see them to know what was going on.
The Elizabethans used to talk about going to hear a play.
Yes.
That's been used by critics to suggest that they didn't actually watch. It's not true. But what it indicates is that the soundtrack is very important. There are times when you won't see everything. There are also times when you won't hear everything. So you're building a composite picture of partial vision and partial audio. Okay, let's just try another thing. You go right over there and you go right over there.
Facing each other or facing it?
Facing each other, yeah.
Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go, carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood.
I'll go no more. I'm afraid to think on what I have done. To look on it again, I dare not.
Infirm of purpose, give me the daggers.
Okay. This is the elastic band theory. Yep. We tend to think if there's a confrontation going on, you get right in each other's face. It's actually more powerful the further apart you get, as that band stretches. It's the hardest thing to get actors to do, and students to do, kids to do, to stand. Yeah, and this is not naturalistic, okay? But it's a theatre. This is a performance. Okay. Notice you're starting to indicate where he's going to take the daggers to. It's there.
Oh, sorry, I
No,
didn't
you
explain
didn't know.
particularly
Oh,
well.
no, I'm just feeding this bit of information in.
Right.
That's Duncan's
Okay,
door
so
there.
I'll
He's
go
been
there.
killed behind
Right.
that door.
Okay.
Okay. No, we'll stop there. I think, yeah, I think, yeah, that's
Pleasure.
done. So, the actors in daylight can see the audience. And those of you that were at the workshop this morning, the Shakespeare, that one there, right, saw Shylock do the whole, not Shylock, Portia do a whole speech to the audience. The actors address the audience. The word soliloquy is another interesting one. There are very few soliloquies in Elizabethan theatre. Most of the time when an actor is by themselves talking, they're doing what's called a direct address to the audience. Why would you not contact the audience for that speech? Why pretend that you're in some sort of cone silence and are communing with the universe and they're overhearing when you can actually be having an interaction with them? My favourite one, of course, is To Be or Not to Be, which is a juridical argument about the pros and cons of living your life and working out how to end it. It's not a delicate young man pondering his adolescent fate. Burbage was 37 when he played Hamlet, and he was a big fat guy, not a callow youth. Okay, and Shakespeare wrote for him. All right. The other factor about performing in daylight, which is what you're going to get in your classroom or your tutorial room with everyone sharing the light, is that you've got no blackouts. A character can't just disappear. The character has to leave the stage. And the audience will see the direction in which the character leaves the stage and will make inferences about it. I saw a Bell production of Macbeth. The scene we're going to do, actually, the sleepwalking scene, where at the end of the scene the doctor says, look, go after and make sure there aren't any sharp instruments out there that she can do herself damage with. And the gentlewoman says, I'll do that, and off she goes. And in this particular production, Lady Macbeth had gone off through one exit, and the gentlewoman, with a great sense of purpose, exited the stage in a completely different direction. Now, half the people in the audience laughed because they thought it was funny. It looked silly. The other half sort of went, tut tut, why are you laughing? Because we shouldn't expect the Elizabethans to be coherent. It just, people go off the stage and they go into an undifferentiated swamp out there with no spatial localization. I can tell you that's not the way things happen. What happens a lot of the time on the Elizabethan stage is that the doors are in polar opposition to each other. If that's the door where Duncan's been killed, this is the door where other stuff happens. If that's the door where a character goes off to bed, then this is the door from which characters enter to come to visit her or to visit her, meet her on the stage. And my research, I've got references to this, I've got a handout for you later, indicates that it was this door that was the door that led further inwards to the private spaces. This was the door that went out to the public spaces. And depending where you are here, that can change. If you're in the street, that's the door to the Capulet House, and that's the way off up the street. If you're in a room, that's the door to the closet, to the most private part of the building, and that's to the less private parts of the building. That sometimes might be the door from the street, and this is the door into the rest of the house. It's a relational system of space. And it's amazing how often, if you look at the texts, you find these practical indications in the texts. These are things that are not lit upon by literary scholars because they're interested in something else. It's extraordinary how much practical information there is in the text. I had a PhD student, recent PhD student, who's done a degree in classical theatre, Plautus's plays. And when he started to research it, he discovered that he had to go through and systematically retranslate the whole of the Plauton corpus because the literary translators that had done the published translation had missed extraordinarily detailed practical information in the texts. It's there for the actors. It's exactly the same in Elizabethan theatre. For example, you can always tell if there are two people coming on in conversation, you know who comes in first. It's the one who's not talking. Well, if the one that comes in first is the one that's talking, he or she's got to turn back and talk to the person who hasn't yet come in. Whereas if they're the second one, they're just talking to the person who's already in. Little things like that. So that's a clue to the actors about the order of entrance. That's very, very practical. All right. I think I've said enough now. I'm going to stop and start some work, I think. Just a second. I'm going to check I've got anything. One last thing, and here's the next bit. Elizabethan actors didn't have time to rehearse. In 1595, in a 10-week period over the summer, the Admiral's men, that's Henslow's company, did 57 performances. 57 performances in 10 weeks, that's okay. Yeah, 5 or 6 a week, cope with that. 20 different plays. 20 different plays. And of those 20, 4 were new plays that they were introducing into the repertory. Now, the one thing that we do know that the Elizabethans had in common with us is a 24-hour day. Right? There just wasn't anywhere near the time to do what we would call rehearsal. This is another reason why I, and I'm not the only one, believe that a lot of the practical information is in the text, because that's what the actor needed, because they didn't actually have time to sit down with the director and work it all out. So there's a lot of practical information there, and in their conventions. This thing that I've got about inwards door and outwards door, there's absolutely no textual evidence of that at all. That doesn't mean it wasn't there. It was in the oral tradition, in the conventions that the actors grew up with and learnt as they, if a character comes on and says, I'm going to bed, they just know that this is what, they don't have to think, which door am I going to go? Another reason why they only had 2 doors, because if you're going to make a mistake, you've got less chance of making a mistake if there's only 2 than if there's 3. If a character's on stage and says, oh, is your master stirring? Oh, here he comes. Right? Now, that actor must know which door that character is going to appear from. Right? If that character is returning from battle, they're going to be coming from there. If they've been in bed, they'll come from there. So the actor knows. All right. We're going to try and do what I've always thought is a very difficult scene, the sleepwalking scene. I need a doctor of physic, a waiting gentlewoman, and a Lady Macbeth. Come on. 1, 2, 3. You can be the gentlewoman. Here's a Lady Macbeth. The other people haven't got the text, so can we just do a quick standing run through? Okay.
I have 2 nights watched with you, but can perceive no truth in your report. When was it she last walked?
Since His Majesty went into the field, I have seen her rise from her bed, throw her nightgown upon her, unlock her closet, take forth a paper, fold it, write upon it, read it, afterwards seal it, and again return to bed. Yet all this while in a most fast sleep.
A great perturbation?
Perturbation.
A great perturbation in nature to receive at once the benefit of sleep and do the effects of watching. In this slumbery agitation, besides her walking and other actual performances, what at any time have you heard her say?
That, sir, which I will not report after her.
You may to me, and 'tis most meet you should.
And neither to you nor to anyone, having no witness to confirm my speech. Oh, lo you, here she comes. This is her very guise, and upon my life, fast asleep. Observe her, stand close.
How came she by that light?
Why, it stood by her. She has lied by her continually. 'Tis her command.
You see, her eyes are open.
Aye, but their sense are shut.
What is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands.
It is an accustomed action with her to seem thus washing her hands. I have known her to continue at this quarter of an hour.
Yet here's a spot.
Hark, she speaks. I will set down what comes from her to satisfy my remembrance the more strongly.
Out, damn spot, out! I say. 1, 2, why, then 'tis time to do it. Hell is murky. Fire, my lord, fire, a soldier and a feared? What need we fear who knows it when none can call our power to account? Yet who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him?
Do you mark that?
The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? What? Will these hands ne'er be clean? No more of that, my lord, no more of that. You mar all with this starting.
Go to, you have known what you should not.
She has spoke what she should not. I am sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known.
Yet here's the smell of the blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Oh, oh, oh!
What a sigh is there. The heart is sorely charged.
I would not have such a heart in my bosom for the dignity of the whole body.
Well, well, well.
Pray God it be so.
This disease is beyond my practice. Yet I've known those which have walked in their sleep, who have died holily in their beds.
Wash your hands. Put on your nightgown. Look not so pale. I tell you yet again, when he was buried, he cannot come out of his grave.
Even so?
To bed. To bed. There's knocking at the gate. Come, give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed. To bed. To bed.
Will she go now to bed?
Directly.
Foul whisperings are abroad. Unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. More needs she, the divine, than the physician. God forgive us all. Look after her, remove from her the means of all annoyance, and still keep eyes upon her. So, good night. My mind she has mated and amazed my sight. I think, but dare not speak.
Good night, good doctor.
Thank you very much. Good. Now, okay, you're not getting out of that. Any comments did anything strike you there? Just things we might work on?
Well, all the stage directions were in the language, in the actual drama.
Yeah. Did you notice how gentle right was starting to always watch actors' feet, particularly untrained actors. The body feels a move coming on, and if you see it, all you've got to do is get them to make it about 10 times bigger. But there's an impulse there to move, right? So you wanted to move away from the doctor, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Then what else was there?
There were a lot of times that I talked to the gentlewoman and then I kind of expected her to reply, but then Lady Macbeth replied.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just a conversation between the two of you, is it?
Mm.
It's you are talking to each other, but you tend to go on philosophically almost, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's also these shared lines, which informs us about the relationship between the characters and
Yep.
the pace.
Yep. Okay.
I struggled with the idea of the social position. So I shifted, and I felt it shift because the words were becoming more defensive for my own self. He was asking me sort of listening to him as an equal. I wasn't an equal, but I knew her, and I wasn't going to come out and assert myself because I'm in a very vulnerable position, and I was shifting in the conversation. That was making me. So I was trying to read the lines without my glasses. It was making it difficult. I was working through which way I was going to work with him. I had to keep working, and it was a living moment. It wasn't, I've got this, or you know.
Okay. You two are talking to each other. You're talking. You in particular are talking, maybe there's some direct addresses to the audience here. Like some of those things are just general propositions, you might just want to throw them out there. So you're focusing, at least in part, on each other. You're also both throwing focus to her, aren't you? Lo, here she comes. Right, that's the big one. But all the time, you're talking about it to make the audience look at her and check, right? Does she really do this? Look, she's got that she has too, da-da-da. What she does with the tape is an interesting thing. She's got the taper, but she then wipes her hands.
Yeah.
So what's she do? I don't know what she does with the taper. Maybe she props it on one of the stage posts. I don't know. The other thing, of course, and this is the issue with workshopping, very often you haven't got your scripts down, so as well as focusing on each other and her, you're trying to read the script, and that makes it very difficult. So there's an advantage in certain situations to try and get the scripts down. I haven't got time to do that today. Mostly in your workshops at either secondary or tertiary level, you're not going to have time to make that happen. But it can be useful as for at least short excerpts. Okay, so you also felt the physical distance between the two of you, between you two. If you didn't have any time to rehearse, there's something else that's really useful. If you recreate this thrust stage configuration in the classroom, this is a really good place for the teacher to be, or over there. Don't have to be upstage centre. See, I can see everyone in the room from here without impinging on the actor space. It's really worth looking at. If you were in a situation where you didn't have much rehearsal time, any ideas about how you might give the actors a 2-line set of directions about what they've got to do? If that's all you've got. No time for blocking, no time for psychologizing, no time for motivation. You go on there, you guys are watching her, she's going to come in. Any ideas about what she does to start? Let's start there. Any sort of macro idea for her blocking?
Lady Macbeth.
Yeah.
Being further over
Yeah.
on the stage, so their attention is over there.
Okay, she comes in there and then she walks
Face the audience.
towards the audience. Okay, down. Okay, even right across. Yeah, and then around and back up to centre stage maybe, because it's interesting. It's only in the second half of her speech that she's talking, so she can do the big thing right down to the corners. Okay, where are you going to put them?
I think, Tim, it's, I feel like you run into trouble maybe if you tell your actor you have to walk here. You could also give them perhaps physical objectives. Do you know what I mean? So rather than saying to your Lady Macbeth, follow this track, maybe it's you're searching something you're searching for, and you think you're finding it along. Do you know what I mean? Or and then perhaps saying to a gentlewoman, you want to be as close to Lady Macbeth as you possibly can, but you're never allowed to touch her. Or and the doctor is trying to prevent the proximity between Lady Macbeth and gentlewoman. Is that what you mean? Those kinds of you give them physical objectives.
I suspect that originally they would have given them physical objectives, but with that comes, as you say, a motivation. The other way of approaching it is to say, give them the physical objectives and then work out the motivation for that, and if they can't motivate it, then you change it. But probably they didn't even have time for that. Probably they had to say, okay, this is a scene in which you've got a central character who is not seeing the other characters, right? Is completely oblivious, is in her own world, and they're watching her. And there's evidence that on the Elizabethan stage, those were the positions for watching. Characters didn't stand behind the stage post or upstage. They were down in that corner, almost like an extra row of audience that's been plonked on the front.
So in the line here, the gentlewoman says, observe her, stand close. If you're there and there.
Close doesn't necessarily.
No, that's what I'm asking. Yeah. So stand close is one of these, these verbals, but you'd be fine being in those positions.
Close means concealed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, close to each other. That's a really interesting point. Let's just see, and this brings with it a sense of risk. If the doctor comes down to here, the gentlewoman goes down to there. But I'm going to get you to do the entrance, right? And you're going to come so close to the doctor in that corner, and then so close to the gentlewoman in that corner, and maybe even in the light of there, the notion of being close. Maybe you actually stay quite close to them, right? bring it home to the audience that she can see you, you're right in the face, but you can't
Yep.
even see her.
Okay.
And then you're going to wander around and end up somehow centre stage for the main part of your lines.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. I don't know if this is going to work. But that's the fun, actually. And when you get to do at the end of a workshop session, often you say, okay, let's just run it through again now, right? And see what we've done. Have you had this experience? That one almost always goes flat. Because all the fun, the excitement has been in the process of developing the thing, and then you say to everyone, let's look at that as a product. And when you look at it as a product, it's not nearly as interesting as looking at the process that you've been going through. Okay, so this isn't going to be the end. Gentlewoman, back for your entrance.
I'm in first.
Okay. So you're just going to go straight down there and take up your
Straight down.
observer's position, because that's what they're doing, right? I've watched with you. Right? We've been here before. I know where to go. You stand there and I stand there. So,
I have 2 nights watched with you, but can perceive no truth in your report.
no. Okay. Try again. Okay. You're going to do the big diagonal. You've got the speech. Most people are going to be watching you. So use it. Big, straight down over here, and then you're talking back to her.
Right. I have 2 nights watched with you, but can perceive no truth in your report. When was it she last walked?
Since His Majesty went into the field, I have seen her rise from her bed, throw her nightgown upon her, unlock her closet, take forth paper, fold it, write upon it, read it, afterwards seal it, and again return to bed. Yet all this while in a most fast sleep.
Great perturbation in nature, to receive at once the benefit of sleep and do the effects of watching. In this slumbery agitation, besides her walking and other actual performances, what at any time have you heard her say?
That, sir, which I will not report after her.
You may to me, and 'tis most meet you should.
Neither to you nor to anyone, having no witness to confirm my speech. Lo you, here she comes. This is her very guise, and upon my life fast asleep. Observe her. Stand close.
How came she by that light?
Why, it stood by her. She has the light by her continually. 'Tis her command.
You see her eyes are open.
Aye, but their sense are shut.
What is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands.
It is the accustomed action with her. It seems thus, washing her hands. I have known her to continue this for 1/4 of an hour.
Yet, here's a spot.
Hark, she speaks. I will set down what comes from her to satisfy my remembrance the more strongly.
Out! Out! Damn spot! Out, I say! 1, 2. Well then, it's time to do it. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie! A soldier and a fiend? What need we fear who knows it when none can call our power to account? Who would have thought of a whole man to have so much blood in him?
You mark that?
The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? What will these hands ne'er be clean? No more of that, my lord, no more of that. You mar all with this starting.
Go to. You have known what you should not.
She has spoke what she should not. I am sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known.
The smell of the blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little one.
What a sighs there, the heart is sorely charged.
I would not have such a heart in my bosom for the dignity of the whole body.
Well.
Pray God it be so.
This disease is beyond my practice, yet I have known those which have walked in their sleep who have died wholly in their beds.
Wash your hands. Put on your nightgown. look not so pale. I tell you yet again, Banquo is buried. He cannot come out of his grave.
So?
To bed.
Will she go now to bed?
Directly.
Foul whisperings are abroad. Unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. More needs she the divine and the physician. God forgive us all. Look after her. Remove from her the means of all annoyance, and still keep eyes upon her. So, good night. My mind she has mated and amazed my sight, I think, but dare not speak.
Good night, good doctor.
Are we going to get him off the stage?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good night, good night.
No, you're going to go that
I'm
way.
going that way, yes, I'm going to her.
I think maybe on that last speech you actually come up to some stage.
Yeah, right.
And do it to
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
just try it again?
Yeah,
So he's going to tell you to go from there, and then he's going to go that
Yeah.
way, and you...
I'm getting over there.
We'll just run that last little bit again.
Yeah, sure.
That was really cool when Ray and Beth actually picked up. It was really spooky.
Will she go now to bed?
Directly.
Foul whisperings are abroad. Unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. More needs she the divine than the physician. God forgive us all. Look after her. Remove from her any means of all annoyance, and still keep eyes on her. So good night. My mind she has mated, and amazed my sight, I think, but dare not speak.
Good night, doctor. Good night.
Yeah, that's better, isn't it? Okay. Well, we actually made quite a lot of progress in 1.5 runs. Okay. Any comments on that though? Apart from applause for the actors. Yeah.
Oh, I just noticed how easy it is when they're on the corners to face the audience, like if there was more audience behind us. They can very easily turn out and then turn back to her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really powerful position. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the geographical centre of the theatre, right? Because the stage comes down to the middle of the yard. Right? But when you're here, you're as far as you can be from all of the galleries. Right? Whereas if you're down here, you're pretty close to the centre, but you've got these galleries very close behind you, so you can face up that way, and everything here, and as you say, you can turn out very quickly. It's just a really little pivot, and you can be talking to those people right there. Yeah, it's.
I thought that second version obviously put more focus on Lady Macbeth, and the gentlewoman and the doctor were like almost like a chorus,
Yeah.
commenting on her behaviour. But I think because they were so far away, I lost that sense of menace and paranoia when they were closer together.
Oh,
The
really?
doctor was kind of inflicting this power over the gentlewoman.
Yeah, I felt as an actor, I really wanted to maintain
Do you
control.
want to be in a face, did you?
Proximity, yeah.
Mm.
I thought that elastic band, that analogy,
Yeah.
had kind of broken a bit.
Okay. It may well be that we've got a small audience close. If you had a bigger audience close, it might be slightly. And if the actors are above, right, because you're standing there like that, looking up at them. Have you stood in the yard at the Pop-Up Globe, anyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. The stage at the Pop-Up Globe is like that high. It's about that much higher than the one in London. And it is terrific to be standing there and looking right up at them. They look like gods, and they act like gods. Yeah, so that's a different a change that might make that. Also, they may not be quite in the corners. They could be a little bit closer to each other. But the comment about them being like a chorus, I think, is very apposite. That if you say, if the actors look, oh yeah, this is a chorus scene. She's going to be centre stage and we're going to be on the periphery. And boom, off they go. All
Can I
right.
ask a question, Tim?
Yeah.
I feel like what the guys down there just had to say is an issue with trying to combine these, obviously, I think, quite accurate recreations of what especially actors that had no rehearsal
Yeah.
time, I think it's an issue of trying to combine that and our modern sensibilities as theatre goers and more importantly screen watchers.
Yeah.
It's hard to so something like this. If I'm bringing this into a classroom for secondary students, say, how do I push that a bit further to help
I
them?
mean, your point about screen, I mean, the classic two-shot for television, the two actors are like that, right? You'd never be like that in real life.
And so that's why that distance feels to us to be...
It is very different.
Almost silly. The foreign's the point of being silly. But
You need to go back beyond square one and sort of take things away. And yes, it's a challenge. There's a Trevor Nunn version with Helena Bonham Carter, Twelfth Night, is it? Or was it Twelfth Night? Has anyone seen it? There's a scene in that was shot on location, and I think it's Antonio and Sebastian, in a cave on the seashore. And when they were filming it, it was blowing a gale, and the actors actually had to shout. Otherwise they couldn't be heard. And all of a sudden, the verse took off. The rest of it had been quite sort of, modern, psychologizing, intimate, and all of a sudden, and that was one occasion where I realised that this verse is made to be projected. Now maybe you start from that. Maybe you start and just do an exercise where you get the students to shout it to each other over great distances and let them see what that. Romeo and Juliet, the Zeffirelli one where he's climbing up the granite and I'm touching here, right? Okay. No, in the original, he's down in that corner and it's all about the distance between the two families. She's up there, he's down there. How can I get across this distance? So it's a lot about the psychological and in that case the family political distances of Verona or wherever it's supposed to be set.